Hello and welcome to the 15th Annual Gold Derby TV Awards. I'm Gold Derby editor Daniel Montgomery here with my fellow editors Joyce Ang, Marcus James Dixon, and Chris Beachum. And we're going to announce the winners. This is the 15th year of these awards. We started in the early 2000s. It started as a vote in our forums. Now we do it through a more automated system in our prediction center. These awards are decided by hundreds of Gold Derby users who arguably, I'd say, know as much or more about the TV landscape these days as the TV Academy that's voting on the Emmys. So these have always been a fairly prestigious event that we're very proud of, and they're decided by a plurality vote, just like the Emmys are. So it'll be interesting to see if we can glean any insight from these going into the awards this weekend at Creative Arts, and then on September 17th for the main event. So with no further ado, Marcus is going to get us started with our very first category, and I will break in with any interesting voting tidbits as they arise.
All right, guys. So the first category is Best Animated Program, and the nominees are Archer, Big Mouth, Bob's Burgers, BoJack Horseman, Rick and Morty, and The Simpsons. And the Gold Derby TV Award goes to BoJack Horseman.
That was a pretty close vote. It was decided by about 30-ish votes. Rick and Morty came in a close second. Simpsons was third. Actually, this is the third year in a row BoJack Horseman has won. That's not the record, though, for us. Family Guy has won Best Animated Program 4 times over the course of our awards.
The next category is Reality Host. The nominees are RuPaul Charles from RuPaul's Drag Race, Ellen DeGeneres from Ellen's Game of Games, Heidi Klum and Tim Gunn, Project Runway, Jane Lynch, Hollywood Game Night, Jeff Probst, Survivor, and the 5 hosts of Queer Eye. And the Gold Derby TV Award goes to RuPaul Charles.
Not quite a blowout. There was one very close competitor to RuPaul, and that was actually the hosts of Queer Eye. They were within less than 30 votes of a potential win, and I think they were actually ahead in our early voting, but then RuPaul kind of took it away. This is RuPaul's second win in a row in this category.
And the next category is Reality Competition Program. The nominees are America's Got Talent, American Ninja Warrior, Project Runway, RuPaul's Drag Race, Survivor, and The Voice. And the Gold Derby TV Award goes to RuPaul's Drag Race.
Third straight win, complete blowout. Not much else to say about that category. That was never really in question.
At least Survivor got nominated.
It's interesting to me to see if RuPaul's Drag Race can beat The Voice this year at the Emmys. Mark Burnett has been in the news for not great reasons in the past few months, maybe the whole last year. So people might hold that against him a little bit on The Voice this year. Who knows?
Next up, I've got our next 2 categories, which are for variety. Starting with Best Variety Talk Series, the nominees are Full Frontal with Samantha Bee, Jimmy Kimmel Live, Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, Late Late Show with James Corden, Late Night with Seth Meyers, and The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. So a lot of lateness in this category. And the winner is Last Week Tonight with John Oliver for, I believe, the 3rd year in a row. The show has won Best Variety Series. And this was a fairly decisive victory over Full Frontal in 2nd place and Jimmy Kimmel in 3rd place. But it wasn't really close between 1st and 2nd. Moving on to the race for Best Variety Sketch Series. The nominees are At Home with Amy Sedaris, Drunk History, Nathan For You, Portlandia, Saturday Night Live, and Tracy Ullman Show. And the Gold Derby Award goes to Saturday Night Live, which had more votes than the next several put together. This was
the entire category.
It might actually be. I'm trying to do quick math in my head. I'm looking at the vote totals now. It might be the whole rest of the category put together, but if not, it's close.
It'll probably be like that at the Emmys too. I mean, the competition just isn't there in sketch.
which is odd because it took them forever to get another variety series win last year. It had been many years.
It was like 24 years.
Yeah, and then now they probably dominate for a while. Well, let's move on to the first acting categories. We've got movie, limited series, supporting actor, and those nominees are Jeff Daniels for Godless, Brandon Victor Dixon for Jesus Christ Superstar, Jimmy Simpson for USS Callister Black Mirror, and then three men from Assassination of Gianni Versace, which would be Cody Fern, Edgar Ramirez, and Finn Wittrock. And our winner this year at the Gold Derby Awards is a non-Emmy nominee, Cody Fern,
who was robbed of a nomination.
Agreed. This was this was one of the most exciting races to watch. It was a very close race. Even from first to sixth, it was about a 50 vote spread, which is an incredibly close category. And think about this as a plurality vote. I decided to do the math on this one, just because with a plurality vote, you need a smaller share of the vote to win. You don't need a consensus. And Cody Fern actually won this, deservedly, I think, but with actually less than 20% of the counted votes. That's how close it was. He was just 4 votes ahead of Jeff Daniels and just 6 votes ahead of Edgar Ramirez.
And those two are up this weekend, the next weekend. So it'd be interesting to see if that, because we know Cody can't win, if Jeff Daniels might have that, or maybe Edgar Ramirez. For movie, limited series, supporting actress, we've got Penelope Cruz and Judith Light for Gianni Versace, Laura Dern and Naomi Watts for Twin Peaks, Nicole Kidman for Top of the Lake China Girl, and Merritt Weaver for Godless. And our winner at the Gold Derby Awards is Judith Light for Versace.
Not a complete blowout, but Penelope Cruz was in second place with a significant number of votes, so it wasn't that far behind. It's interesting that they split the votes, but they still finished 1 and 2.
That is interesting. I would say that Judith Light was the standout, though, and whenever you have 2 from the same show, we've noticed in the past couple of years, and one is the standout, like Sterling versus Milo, for example, then usually that person wins at the Emmys.
Next, we have the lead categories. First up is actor. The nominees are Darren Criss from The Assassination of Gianni Versace, Benedict Cumberbatch, Patrick Melrose, Kyle MacLachlan, Twin Peaks, Evan Peters, American Horror Story Cult, Jesse Plemons, USS Callister Black Mirror, and Jimmy Tatro, American Vandal. And the Gold Derby TV Award goes to Darren Criss. So Versace went 3 for 3.
Yeah, and I was surprised by how much of a blowout this category was. I wasn't
it's
surprised.
All the Darren Criss fans.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised that he won, but I thought Kyle MacLachlan would get a little closer. I thought Benedict Cumberbatch, Evan Peters would get a lot of fan support. And Kyle MacLachlan did finish in second, but it was not any margin that was ever going to be caught up with. It was about the same margin as SNL winning Variety Sketch Series is how big a blowout this was.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what that means for the Emmys. It's a very interesting category.
Where did Benedict finish, since he's like in second place in our odds for the Emmys?
Where did Benedict finish, Daniel?
Benedict was in third, significantly behind. He had about half the votes of Kyle MacLachlan in second place, a little more than half. And Kyle MacLachlan had well under half of Darren Criss's total.
Interesting. Wow. And for actress, the nominees are Jessica Biel, The Sinner, Laura Dern, The Tale, Michelle Dockery, Godless, Kristen Milioti, USS Callister, Black Mirror, Elizabeth Moss, Top the Lake, China Girl, and Sarah Paulson, American Horror Story Cult. And the Gold Derby TV Award goes to Laura Dern.
No surprise there. And another big win. Jessica Biel finished in second with a healthy number of votes. Sarah Paulson and Kristen Milioti were actually tied for third. But yeah, Laura Dern won this in a walk. Which is interesting because it makes me nervous because I'm actually predicting Michelle Dockery at the Emmys, going out on a limb there.
We also didn't have Regina King in here, so.
That's true. That's true. Now we're going for the 2 long-form program categories, starting with Best TV Movie. The nominees are Fahrenheit 451, Flint, Paterno, The Tale, and USS Callister Black Mirror. And the Gold Derby Award goes to USS Callister Black Mirror. That was no surprise. It wasn't a complete blowout, but it had a huge lead over The Tale, and only USS Callister and The Tale really had any meaningful support.
I think this category is one of the few locks at the Emmys, although it will be at the Creative Arts this year. So if you haven't updated your Creative Arts predictions in a while, that's a new category to do in that prediction center.
That'll be Saturday night's Creative Arts.
And that brings us to Best Limited Series. The nominees are American Horror Story Cult, American Vandal, The Assassination of Gianni Versace, Godless, and Twin Peaks. It's not Twin Peaks. The Gold Derby Award goes to The Assassination of Gianni Versace by a huge margin. But Twin Peaks did finish a very respectable second.
I'm surprised Versace didn't win Best Actress with all of this this love. Even though there were no contenders.
Write in votes.
Yeah.
Well, let me move along comedy categories. We'll start with the guest categories, and guest actor nominees are Sterling K. Brown, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Donald Glover, SNL, Bill Hader, SNL, John Hamm, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Lin-Manuel Miranda, Curb Your Enthusiasm, and Cat Williams for Atlanta. And the winner of the Gold Derby Award is Bill Hader for Saturday Night Live.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that at the Emmys this weekend, this looks like it's going to be a close race between Bill Hader and Donald Glover, but Donald Glover was actually fourth in this category. Not that far out in terms of the number of votes, but actually second place was John Hamm, and third place was Sterling K. Brown for Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Comedy guest actress, 3 women from SNL, Tina Fey, Tiffany Haddish, and Saoirse Ronan. We also have Jane Lynch, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Maya Rudolph for The Good Place, and Molly Shannon for Will and Grace. And our Gold Derby Award winner is Maya Rudolph for The Good Place.
Yes.
And this was one of those categories where if you think your vote doesn't count, your vote counts. Maya Rudolph won this by 6 votes.
Wow.
This was a very tight two-way race between her and actually Tiffany Haddish. And you know, Jane Lynch also had significant support. Saoirse Ronan actually had a significant amount of support, but really it was just a two actress race in that category.
Okay, so for comedy supporting actor, the nominees are Titus Burgess, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. And by the way, he's won 3 years in a row. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Sean Hayes for Will and Grace, Brian Tyree Henry for Atlanta, Mark Maron for Glow, Lakeith Stanfield for Atlanta, and Henry Winkler for Barry. And let's just make that 4 in a row for Titus Burgess. He is unbeatable. He's the unbeatable Titus Burgess.
I think he might be unbeatable. This is a new record. Neil Patrick Harris won this category 3 years in a row back when he was on How I Met Your Mother. No one has won this category from us 4 years in a row, or 4 times.
He's going to make it 5 for 5 next year. Then
I have a feeling the only other nomination for Kimmy Schmidt this year was comedy series, and the fact that Titus Burgess won it anyway, and it wasn't close. Nominated. Yeah, it wasn't. Oh, that's right. John Hamm was nominated. I'm thinking about the Emmys. But yeah, the fact that this wasn't even close, I feel like Titus Burgess might just close it out and go 5 for 5 next year. Henry Winkler
he should second. Have an Emmy for this.
He should have a couple.
Probably won't get one.
What's odd to me about this, though, is, you know, every year we have 2 or 3 or 4 people on film or TV. I'm thinking like Darren Criss this year. Their fans just swarm us, you know, wanting them to win. Back for our film awards, Timothée Chalamet's fans just swarmed us. Titus Burgess, it's not like he has a fan group that's swarming us. It feels like a purely organic reaction to him being in the category among a lot of our voters.
I think a lot of our voters also feel like he should have won the Emmy, and the fact that he keeps losing the Emmy, that maybe helps him here.
But they should just give him the Emmy.
Yeah,
I agree. It's interesting. He's one of those. He's won 4 of these now from us. You know, you look at these things that like the Emmys, like a Doris Roberts winning 4, or you know, people who win over and over again. People get sick of them. I don't think people are sick of Tituss Burgess yet because he's so like. You look at this category and go like, what's the best comedy supporting actor? It's like, yeah, that makes sense. Every year it just
Well,
makes
you
sense.
still feel like from a career standpoint, an award standpoint, worldwide, he's still being underappreciated. Not with us, but I mean, he's really never been on stage anywhere that I recall picking up an award.
Okay, so comedy supporting actress. The nominees are Alex Borstein for The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Darcy Carden for The Good Place, Betty Gilpin for Glow, Kate McKinnon for Saturday Night Live, Laurie Metcalf for Roseanne, and Megan Mullally for Will and Grace. And the Gold Derby TV Award goes to Darcy Carden for The Good Place. That's 2 for The Good Place.
Yeah, this was a close one. Not quite a squeaker. Second place was a tie between Betty Gilpin and Alex Borstein, who were both 14 votes behind Darcy Carden. So it was pretty close. And then Kate McKinnon was less than 25 votes shy.
Did she win last year?
Top to bottom. Kate McKinnon, I believe, won last year. So top to bottom, everyone had a significant amount of support. The spread between first place and last place was only about 50 votes, which is, you know, pretty close when you consider how many people voted for these.
It's so interesting whenever a non-Emmy nominee wins with us. Like it just happened a few categories ago for Cody Fern, right? Mm-hmm. So now I look at who came in second with us because that may be who I picked for the Emmys.
That's what I'm thinking is Darcy's not eligible. So for weeks I've had Alex Borstein. I know Kate McKinnon, you typically go with repeats if you're not certain, but I think, you know, Maisel is in first or second for comedy series. We all know that. And the big thing for me is Alex has 2 nominations this year. She's also up for a voiceover, which she might also win. So whenever I see somebody with 2 nominations, it makes me wonder if there's just an overpowering of support to get them something somewhere.
Yeah, I can see Maisel potentially pulling a Handmaid's Tale and sweeping the female acting categories like Handmaids did last year, because it's definitely possible in all 3 races.
Unless you're Laurie Metcalf and you had 3 nominations a couple of years ago and you lost all of them.
Yeah, it does happen. That's why.
But Laurie Metcalf wasn't attached to a show that year that had as much support as Maisel does this year.
Yeah, and like 2 of them were guest nominations. So our next category is comedy actor. The nominees are Anthony Anderson, Blackish, Ted Danson, The Good Place, Donald Glover, Atlanta, Bill Hader, Barry, Eric McCormick, Will and Grace, and Andy Samberg, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And the Gold Derby TV Award goes to Donald Glover.
This was a fairly close race. I don't think Donald Glover's lead was ever that much at risk. But Bill Hader was a very close second, and Ted Danson was actually a pretty close third. They were all within 60 points of Donald Glover, and then there's a big drop off after that. It was really a 3-way race.
I'm glad Bill Hader won something with us because at the Emmys he could seriously lose all. Does he have 5 nominations?
Yeah,
5, yeah.
And they're all against Donald Glover.
Yeah, it's very possible.
Next is comedy actress. The nominees are Pamela Adlon, Better Things, Kristen Bell, The Good Place, Alison Brie, Glow, Rachel Brosnahan, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Issa Rae, Insecure, and Tracy Ellis Ross, Blackish. And the Gold Derby TV Award goes to, surprise, surprise, Rachel Brosnahan.
Yeah, this wasn't even close. And at the Emmys, it might even be
it's
less
like
close.
The biggest lock of the night.
It's because second and third place in our voting are the 2 nominees that didn't get Emmy nominations. So Kristen Bell finished second and Alison Brie finished third in our voting. Then there was a pretty big drop off to 4th through 6th. Brosnahan ran away with this, by a gigantic margin. Which brings us to the top 2 categories for comedies. Best comedy episode up first. The nominees are Atlanta is nominated actually twice. It's nominated for Barbershop and for Teddy Perkins. Barry for Chapter 8, Know the Truth. The Good Place for Dance Dance Resolution. The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel for The Pilot. And Will and Grace for Rosario's Quince Añera. And the winner is The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel for The Pilot. In a fairly close race with Teddy Perkins from Atlanta. And this is one of those interesting cases. We haven't seen vote splitting hurt a show very much at these awards, but looking at the vote totals, if Barbershop had been out of this competition, Barbershop finished 5th in the voting, but if Barbershop hadn't been in this competition, I wonder if those votes would have gone straight to Teddy Perkins. If that's the case, then Teddy Perkins would have beaten The Pilot of Maisel. So it's possible this was a vote split situation.
I always tell people in our forums when they're doing the nominations part, like, just pick one episode of your show and rally behind that. You don't want 2 episodes, because I feel like these categories are ones that we see vote splits in. I think Game of Thrones did it a few years ago.
Episodes more than anything. I agree.
Which brings us to our final comedy award of these awards this year, and that's Best Comedy Series, of course. The nominees are Atlanta, Barry, Glow, The Good Place, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, and Will and Grace. And the Gold Derby TV Award goes to Atlanta. This is the first win. The show was nominated last year, but Veep was in contention, and Veep won it last year. Interestingly, in the middle of voting, The Good Place was actually winning. Atlanta just surged somewhere in the middle, and it won by a fairly safe margin, but it was still pretty close between Atlanta and The Good Place. And Marvelous Mrs. Maisel was not very far behind in 3rd place. It was really just the 3 of those shows that dominated the support.
Real quick, are we all picking Atlanta for the Emmys?
I'm going with Maisel.
Okay. It's a tough one. I don't know what's going to happen.
I don't know.
Right now I have Atlanta.
That one. They're so different in the types of shows they are. What I'm trying to figure out is what I think the majority of voters, what their makeup is. Are they more of an Atlanta person or a Maisel person? I just can't figure that out.
The reason I'm still going with Maisel, and I could very easily be wrong because Emmy voting is so different than it used to be. I just think Maisel is the show that is most like what Emmy voters have voted for in the past in top series categories. Even then it's different. It's an hour show. Only one has ever won. But it's, Atlanta is so far out there that it feels, it's a very unusual win for them. Not that it would be a bad win.
Well, whoever gets it, enjoy it for a year, because Veep's coming back. One more trophy. Drama. We'll go moving on to drama. The guest actor category: Cameron Britton for Mindhunter, Matthew Good for The Crown, Ron Cephas Jones and Gerald McRaney for This Is Us, Peter Mullen and Jimmy Simpson for Westworld, and our Gold Derby Award winner is Cameron Britton for Mindhunter.
And no offense to these other 5 nominees, but I was so excited at how big a blowout this was. This was not a close race. It was Britton all the way. Matthew Good did have a significant amount of support in 2nd place, but Britton had almost twice as many votes as Matthew Good did.
The crazy thing is I've met Cameron Britton in real life. He's nothing like this character.
It's called acting.
Well, some people win and they're not acting very hard, but he's definitely playing. He's putting on a performance, and that's what the Emmy voters. Yeah,
this was one of the performances of the year for me. Especially, I've interviewed him a couple of times, and it's so night and day him in real life.
And he's the show's only nomination at the Emmys too.
Yeah, it does have one other Gold Derby nomination, thankfully, because Jonathan Groff. But and I'm wondering if he could win on his only nomination in the Emmys. But this, this result gives me a little bit of hope.
I've got him winning at the Emmys, but boy, it's hard to figure. I mean, they don't. It's kind of like Oscars with supporting actor, where they typically go with the the more veteran. Do they go with somebody they'd never heard of before a few months ago? I don't know. I'm predicting him, but it's kind of shaky.
Well, they've done it before. I mean, Michael Emerson, he wasn't.
I'm talking about under this system. This system.
Oh, the new system.
We don't know that they're even watching anything.
Yeah,
he got in.
This system, Joe McCraney seems like a safer bet.
Yeah, they don't necessarily always remember who's already won either, so they might think, oh, let's give it to Gerald McCraney. That would be fun, and they don't remember they got one last year. But that'd be fine with us. He's as nice a guy in the world too. Mm-hmm. Drama guest actress Viola Davis for Scandal, Rinko Kikuchi for Westworld, Diana Rigg for Game of Thrones, Marissa Tomei and Samira Wiley for Handmaid's Tale, and Cicely Tyson for How to Get Away with Murder, who just found out she's getting an honorary Oscar in the last day or so, which I had predicted. The winner here might go on to a win in a couple of days, and that's Diana Rigg for Game of Thrones.
I love that.
This was a big blowout. Diana Rigg had above and beyond the votes of second place, Samira Wiley, Viola Davis in third place, Rinko Kikuchi in fourth. You would have to add those next three together to get Diana, to beat Diana Rigg. It's interesting. I wonder if this is an indicator of the Emmys or if this is just Gold Derby, because this is the third time Diana Rigg has won Guest Actress for Game of Thrones from the Gold Derby Awards, and she hasn't won at the Emmys yet. And only one actor from Game of Thrones has ever won at the Emmys thus far, and that's Peter Dinklage.
So she's the Titus Burgess of the drama guest actress category. She keeps winning with us. Can't win at the Emmys.
She didn't win any of them consecutively. So they were like 1 or 2 years apart between all three of them. So we love her a lot.
So let's move on to drama supporting actor. The nominees are Peter Dinklage for Game of Thrones, Noah Emmerich for The Americans, David Harbour for Stranger Things, Justin Hartley for This Is Us, Noah Schnapp for Stranger Things, and Matt Smith for The Crown. And the Gold Derby TV Award goes to David Harbour, Stranger Things. He's also the Emmy frontrunner.
Yeah. Interestingly, this was another case of a vote split, but a vote split where the two vote splitters ended up 1 and 2. Noah Schnapp was in second place, and actually in our early voting, I think he was leading. But David Harbour opened up a pretty decisive lead in the end. This was another one of those really, really close categories from top to bottom. Second place through fifth place were grouped by just 50, were separated by just 50 votes. David Harbour had about 50 votes on Noah Schnapp. So top to bottom, this was a really, really tight race.
What you just said, Marcus, I don't know this category there is a front runner at the Emmys.
I feel like a lot of people just have David just like as a place.
Well, it's almost a complete overhaul from last year, and you don't have last year's winner. So I don't necessarily want it to happen, but the only one that we know they like is Peter Dinklage at the Emmys. That's why I moved him back into first. We've seen them bypass some of these others before, and I don't know that they've, we've seen any of the other ones, be really established. So that's the only reason.
Just give it to Mandy Patinkin.
I wouldn't entirely rule that out.
He's the last one remaining from Homeland year after year.
I'm predicting Dinklage too for the same reason Chris is, but I remember this category is in the same position drama guest actress was in last year. Last year was a complete overhaul of drama guest actress, and that was the year Ann Dowd came sort of out of nowhere. Very few of us thought that she was going to be the one to win that, but that was such a wide open race that I don't think any of us thought anyone would have been totally surprising. And I think it's the same here.
I'm going out on a limb. I'm going with Matt Smith. He's just so popular.
And we know they like The Crown in this category. The Crown won it last year, so maybe those John Lithgow votes will just cross over here. That's entirely possible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so drama supporting actress. We have Millie Bobby Brown for Stranger Things, Ann Dowd for The Handmaid's Tale, Lena Headey for Game of Thrones, Vanessa Kirby for The Crown, Tandy Newton for Westworld, and Yvonne Strahovski for Handmaid's Tale. I've been saying this for a long time, and I think she's winning the Emmy. It's Yvonne Strahovski is our winner here at the Gold Derby Awards.
And it was a sizable margin. She won by more than 100 votes. Second place was actually Vanessa Kirby from The Crown. And third place was Tandy Newton, who actually won this award from us last year. So yeah, and Dad was down in 5th place, so Yvonne didn't have to even worry about any vote splitting.
Well, let's be careful here. There are certain people each year on any cycle that are sort of gold derby things.
Yeah,
you have to be careful of them. And Yvonne's one of them. Barry and Chris is one of them. Not that they won't win the Emmy, but here's the situation. If Yvonne had not won with us, there's no way she was winning the Emmy. That's how you kind of look at some people. It was like when we were looking at votes coming in last year on Jessica Lange. She is definitely a gold derby favorite. And when I saw that Nicole Kidman was doubling her up, I took Jessica out of my Emmy predictions and moved Nicole in. So if they're a gold derby thing and they can't win with us, that's more of a indicator than I think Yvonne actually winning with us. But you're right, I may switch to her. I'm going with Ann Dowd because in a lot of races I'm going with who won last year. But Yvonne could win.
I'm just actively rooting against all of last year's winners. Nothing against them. I love all of last year's winners, but I just want fresh blood. I want new meat up there on the stage.
And
I just don't like laziness.
They'll say this year's new meat is.
I don't like laziness. If they deserve it in your mind, if you're a voter and they deserve it, but if you're just going, oh, I guess I'll go with X. That's not. You shouldn't be voting.
And Yvonne definitely had a stronger season than Ann Dowd did. Ann Dowd is fantastic, whatever she does. Yeah. But
and she has the better
definitely had more
episode if they actually watched it. Next up, we have drama actor. The nominees are Sterling K. Brown, This Is Us, Jonathan Groff, Mindhunter, Freddie Highmore, The Good Doctor, Matthew Rhys, The Americans, Milo Ventimiglia, This Is Us, and Jeffrey Wright, Westworld. And the Gold Derby TV Award goes to Matthew Rhys, who just took over our Emmy odds to win as well.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Wow.
Very exciting. This was one of those interesting ones. I don't know if Sterling K. Brown is the kind of like Gold Derby guy who needs, if he can't win with us, he can't win at the Emmys. I think he could win at the Emmys even if he can't.
Oh, totally. Yeah. He already won 2 years in a row.
But what's interesting is that Matthew Rhys isn't a Gold Derby guy either, and he dominated this category in our voting. And Sterling, who won it last year from us, finished 3rd. The This Is Us guys actually finished 2nd and 3rd, but no, this was not a vote splitting issue because if you add Milo and Sterling up, they are still like a handful of votes behind Matthew Rhys. Is how big a lead Matthew Rhys.
Well, I've got Matthew Rhys winning. I'm not comfortable with that at the Emmys. I mean, I think Sterling's probably right there. But here's the difference for me. I said I'm picking a lot of last year's repeat winners. I think last year Sterling was above and beyond looking at vote splitting. The choice, if you were going to go This Is Us over Milo. Milo was, I think there were 7, and Milo we all felt like was really lucky to get in. I mean, this year though, Milo really had the better season. So here is a case at the Emmys where vote splitting could happen, and that would hurt Sterling.
That's true. And Sterling didn't do a lot of campaigning this time. I think he's so busy making all those blockbuster movies.
Yeah, he's got 3 or 4 movies coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Milo actually finished ahead of Sterling in our voting. So This Is Us fans among Gold Derby's users picked Milo.
Next, we have drama actress. The nominees are Jodie Comer, Killing Eve, Claire Foy, The Crown, Mandy Moore, This Is Us, Elizabeth Moss, The Handmaid's Tale, Sandra Oh, Killing Eve, and Kerry Russell, The Americans. And the Gold Derby TV Award goes to Elizabeth Moss.
Yeah, and this is her 2nd win in a row in this category. But it's actually her 4th individual performance win at the Gold Derby Awards. We gave her Drama Supporting Actress 1 year for Mad Men, and we gave her Movie Mini Actress 1 year for the first go-round of Top of the Lake. This is actually a fairly competitive category. Elizabeth Moss had a lead throughout voting, but Claire Foy was a close 2nd. Kerry Russell wasn't far off in 3rd place, and Sandra Oh had significant support in 4th. So it was very much divided. It's one of those things where if you have a front runner, but you don't have one clear alternative, then the front runner just wins again.
It's a rule to follow all through the big award shows.
Like, this is one of the most competitive Emmy categories, but I feel like everybody has like their own pocket of fans, and I don't know if it's enough to overcome.
Moss, and I'm not thrilled about it. I mean, she took home 2 last year, But the three that are really Gold Derby, I mean, if you ever go into the forums, people are always talking about Claire Foy, always talking about Sandra Oh, always talking about Kerry Russell. If it goes back to what we just said about somebody else, if they couldn't win with us, if they couldn't overtake Elizabeth Moss with us, I don't think they can do it at the Emmys.
And it's interesting, the experts' predictions for the Emmys. Elizabeth Moss is winning, but a lot of people are going with some people are picking Claire Foy, some people are picking Kerry Russell.
That's exactly what Daniel was just saying.
And like the other problem is like Claire and Kerry are up for their final seasons too. So it's like you also have to choose between one of them. Like so is Tatiana, but she's already won one. So
once you beat her.
Yeah.
But all the people who are picking these other outliers have Elizabeth Moss in second. I think that really tells you a lot. So I may switch over to Elizabeth Moss at the Emmys. I was trying this Claire Foy thing, but I'm not going to stick with that.
If her movie, she had a movie earlier, but if let's say First Man had opened in August instead of coming up because they think she might be a real Oscar contender this year, that could have helped her.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it definitely would have helped her.
I don't think right now the mass people going to work every day and voting are even aware she's in.
Yeah, because they're talking about the flag.
Which brings us to the last two categories for dramas, starting with drama episode. The nominees are The Americans for their finale Start. Game of Thrones is nominated twice for Beyond the Wall and The Spoils of War. The Handmaid's Tale is nominated for June. Stranger Things for Chapter 9, The Gate. And This Is Us for Super Bowl Sunday. And the Gold Derby TV Award goes to The Americans for Start. And this could be another potential vote-splitting situation. Again, Game of Thrones with two nominees in this category. If you add them up, they beat Start. But Start was so far ahead of either of them that, I'm not sure if you take all those votes away from one episode, they all necessarily go to the other one. I think even with one Game of Thrones episode, Start still might have won.
I think if Beyond the Wall was in there alone, it would have won. But if Spoils of War was in there alone, I don't know if that would have won. But we'll never know.
And if I remember right, when we were doing nominations, there was a third Game of Thrones episode that was like right in 7th place. They could have had 3 out of the 6.
Oh, The Dragon and the Wolf?
I think maybe so, yeah.
Because that's nominated at the Emmys.
Yeah, that was the big finale where all the characters finally met.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I do think this episode is winning writing at the Emmys. Even though I know it's they haven't really won anything big at the Emmys, or on the primetime ceremony at least, they won for Margot. It just feels like a Friday Night Lights kind of a situation.
I know. So Matthew and the show can win writing.
Matthew and the show together. You have an article all set to go that night.
And interestingly, the show, The Americans has never been a big Gold Derby player. I look back, and these are the first 2 awards that The Americans has ever actually won from us.
Really?
So yeah, I believe so.
You didn't give it to Margot for drinking coffee?
No, we did not give it to Margot. I believe we have
Our people watch episodes.
So yeah, these are which brings us to our final category for dramas. At least we have a few other general categories coming up after. The nominees for Best Drama Series are The Americans, The Crown, Game of Thrones, The Handmaid's Tale, Killing Eve, Stranger Things, and This Is Us. And the Gold Derby Award goes to Game of Thrones.
It's one of the closest races of the whole thing, right?
It was incredibly close, especially for a top category like this to come this close. I believe Handmaid's Tale was actually winning at one point during the voting, and Game of Thrones ended up winning by 13 votes over The Handmaid's Tale and The Americans. They were tied for second place. It was a really tight 3-way race. It's really fascinating to see how those votes came in. This is actually the 3rd win in a row for Game of Thrones. If you consider that last year it went to Stranger Things, but Game of Thrones wasn't eligible. Game of Thrones won the last 2 years in a row, or the previous 2 years in a row. Which also ties the record for the most drama series wins. Lost won 3 times, Mad Men won 3 times, and Breaking Bad won 3 times from us. Not counting, Lost also won a Best Drama Series of the Decade award for 2000 to 2009, but not counting that, this is a tie for the record.
So Game of Thrones final season next year could break the Gold Derby record.
Could break the Gold Derby record, yes.
Some of these may not be eligible either. We know The Americans is not. The Crown should be. Handmaid's Tale, we're hearing, we don't know. It hasn't gone into production, which this time last year it had, so that's a possibility. Stranger Things will not. They've already announced they're coming back in June. So it's going to be
So it'll be This Is Us, is what you're saying.
Well, it may be Game of Thrones easily.
What about Westworld? We snubbed it, but is that
Westworld is not going to make back in time.
They start production in June, so they're skipping the whole season.
Wow.
Well, we have 3 more awards. These are not Emmy categories, and we love doing these every year, and I get to do one of our favorites. I'm telling you what, the people that vote, we have over 1,000 people voting from around the world. This one category of Breakthrough Performer of the Year, every year, all 6 are just so solid. When it starts, I look at it thinking, how in the world can you make a prediction here? They're all so solid and deserving. The nominees are Ian Armitage, Cameron Britton, Cody Fern, Betty Gilpin, Tiffany Haddish, and Noah Schnapp. And our Gold Derby Breakthrough Performer of the Year is Tiffany Haddish.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I feel like this probably influenced the guest actress race, where people knew they could vote for Tiffany Haddish here. So that probably helped Maya Rudolph win that category for comedy guest actress. This was a pretty decisive win for Tiffany Haddish. I'm surprised it wasn't closer given the level of these nominees. Noah Schnapp finished second, Betty Gilpin in third. Britton and Fern finished 4th and 5th, but that's okay because they already won Gold Derby awards from us.
That could be another. What you just said could have been true the opposite way. I'm voting for Cameron here. I'm voting for Cody here. I'm not going to vote for them on Breakthrough. But we've had a lot of Breakthrough winners that did win another category. So in film and TV,
I believe Rami Malek might have been like that a couple of years ago.
Marcus gets the last 2.
So Ensemble of the Year is first, and this is whether you're a variety show or comedy or drama or limited series or a TV movie, everything combined for Ensemble. And the nominations are The Assassination of Gianni Versace, Game of Thrones, Glow, The Good Place, The Handmaid's Tale, and This Is Us. And the Ensemble of the Year is actually The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, I'm surprised that this didn't go hand in hand with drama series. This was pretty close. It was only 13 votes ahead of Game of Thrones, but I'm very surprised that which Game of Thrones has won twice with us in this category before. If Game of Thrones was the best drama series, I'm surprised since it has such a big ensemble that it wasn't also the ensemble.
More surprising to me though is Versace took home the most acting awards individually. You would have thought it would have been the ensemble winner.
But maybe this is sort of like that, again, that breakthrough performer thing. They knew they were voting for all of the actors for Versace anyway, so why give it best ensemble?
And then the final category is Performer of the Year. And this is, you don't have to just be, on one show. This is usually people who are on a mix of different shows.
And we don't attach a show to their nomination because it could be a combination of all the things they did on television over the course of the year.
The nominees are Darren Criss, Laura Dern, Claire Foy, Donald Glover, Bill Hader, and Elizabeth Moss. And the Gold Derby TV Award goes to Donald Glover, Performer of the Year.
Which is interesting. It's historic in a couple of ways. It's actually, you think about Hollywood as being very male dominated, but Gold Derby awards have been very female dominated. This is only the 5th time this award has gone to a man in the 15-year history of our awards, and it's the first time it's gone to a person of color. So that's an exciting.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know it either. Past winners.
Even though it says Performer of the Year, I certainly feel like people took into account that he's directing and he's writing and he's producing. They could have taken into account that he was all over the Grammy Awards, as a performer. It could have been a combination of all those things. I remember Tina Fey, I think, won one year, and I felt the same way. Like they were rewarding her for doing a lot of things on her show.
Yeah, and what's interesting was that it wasn't even close. Second place was Elizabeth Moss, and third place was Laura Dern. Combined, they still have fewer votes than Donald Glover. I'm surprised Laura Dern didn't do slightly better, just because of so many Twin Peaks stands at Gold Derby, and the fact that she had that and The Tale, seemed like people who had that last year, like Carrie Coon won it when she had Fargo and The Leftovers. So having multiple projects certainly helps you win that. Sarah Paulson won when she had OJ and American Horror Story that year. So I'm surprised Laura Dern didn't come closer. Yeah, this was a pretty decisive win for Donald.
Well, this has been fun for us. We started in the middle of June with nominations, and then announced those in July, let you vote the whole last month. And all of these winners and nominees, by the way, if you go to any of these shows or performers' IMDb pages, they're not only this year will be on there in a few days, I'm certain, but all 14 other years. So you can see how a particular performer has stacked up over the years. It's right there with their Oscar nominations and their Grammys and their Emmy nominations and all those others. So thank you all for voting. Thank you for watching this. The complete list, if you missed anything, will be up on our homepage in a few minutes. We'll also start tweeting that out and put that on Facebook. And a couple of things I wanted to let you know about. This weekend, Creative Arts Awards. Joyce and Marcus will be backstage Saturday. Marcus and I will be backstage Sunday. We'll also be on the red carpet getting some interviews. And what's great, though, is this is not on television. So we have live shows on our homepage hosted by Matt Noble. Daniel will be there. A lot of the other contributors that you see all the time will be on there. And they, through us that'll be backstage, we'll be letting them know who the winners are the second they happen. And they'll be announcing those winners and discussing them just as they happen. And we'll be the only place online where you can get the winners that fast. So it's over, what would you say, over 100 categories between Saturday and Sunday. So it's a lot to cover. The 4 guest stars, TV, movie, variety special. We're going to have some EGOT winners this weekend. So be sure to watch that live on our homepage both days. And I want to remind you, you can jump in and predict the Creative Arts Awards. Those will close down around mid-afternoon Pacific on Saturday for the whole weekend. But you can predict all, I think we've got 25 or so categories. And you can still predict, obviously, through another week, the Emmy Awards for the primetime ceremony. And you do get a prize if you're the best predictor. And you could try to beat all of us as well. So anyway, thanks for watching the 15th Annual Gold Derby Awards. And we will see you soon.